This is Luke from Emo Electric, and we're here for part 2 of our 3 horsepower electric outboard comparison video. We're going to head out on the water today, and we're going to go over some of the features of these motors. We're going to talk about the displays, how to control these motors, be it with a tiller or a remote throttle, and then run you through how the tilt trim mechanisms work on each of these electric outboards. Make sure to check out the other parts of this video, and if you have any questions about any of the electric outboards we're talking about here, feel free to leave a comment below. And if you want to download our PDF guide that compares all of these motors, or if you'd like to purchase any of these motors, head over to our website, which is emoelectric.co. So one of the really great things about the Torqeedo motor is how rich the display is. You get more information from the Torqeedo Travel S than any other electric outboard that we're talking about today, and we'll show you what that is. So there's a few different options for displays here. The one that we're on is what I find most useful, but there's one that shows you the power output in watts, one that shows you your speed in the center, but the one that I like gives you your runtime big in the center of your screen and your state of charge represented by that battery. So you can see right now we have a range of 11 nautical miles and a runtime of 3 hours and 23 minutes. And then in the bottom of the screen we've got our power output in watts on the left, our RPMs on the right. The upper right is our state of charge, and then our upper left is our speed. This is also the only motor that has a built-in GPS, and therefore the only motor that gives you your speed. Another cool thing about the computer in the Torqeedo here is that you can connect it to the Torqeedo app on your phone, which can show you your previous trips, but it also allows you to update the software on this by piggybacking off the connection between the motor and your phone, which also none of the other electric outboards that we're talking about today have. So looking at the display on the Spirit, one thing to point out is that this motor is actually the ePropulsion Spirit Evo, not the Spirit 1.0 Plus. They're basically the same thing. The Evo has a few extra features, but it's the same battery, same motor. We have a whole nother video on that if you want to learn more. But the displays are different. So we'll overlay the display on the screen here of the 1.0 Plus, but on the Evo, we can see our runtime. So that's our time remaining in minutes and hours. If I press this up button, it'll show me how long I've been running the motor for today. We get our state of charge out of 100 up at the top there, but if I press OK, it'll tell us the voltage of our battery. Typically, percentage is what we're looking at. And then at the bottom there, we can see our power output in watts. Right now, that's 215, which is about 20% throttle. On the Spirit 1.0 display, you get the same information, it's just not quite as rich. So instead of getting your percentage out of 100%, it's in a little bar in a circle that rounds it to the nearest 10%. Other than that, you get the same information there. So the display on the Remigo is limited, right? There's a lot of trade-offs with this motor. I think it's probably one of the most durable electric outboards that we sell, but we don't get much in the way of speed, runtime data, all that. We don't have a screen. We can see our state of charge rounded to the nearest 10% with those green lights there. And then if I press this button, we'll start to move. All right, so now we're going forward, about 10% power output. And we can see there's one light lit up there. And that's all the information that we really get from the Remigo. So you can't see how much runtime you have left. That is an issue for some people, but in reality, you get used to using this motor pretty quickly. You'll get an idea of how far you're going and what sort of speeds you need to use to accommodate that range. So the display on the Temo is nice and simple. Gives us 3 pieces of information, really all that we really need. We've got our state of charge up at the top, which is 85%. Then our power output in watts in the middle, running around 550. And then our runtime in hours at 1 hour and 24 minutes. So not as much information there as the Torqeedo motor, and similar amount to the ePropulsion Spirit. So the model of the Travel S that we have right here is the tiller version. You can convert this motor to a remote throttle version. This motor does not come stock in that version, so you have to purchase the tiller version and then purchase the remote kit separately. In that remote kit, there's everything you need to hook up a Teleflex steering line right there, as well as a wired remote throttle that you'd put next to your steering wheel. The Travel XP, the 5 horsepower version of this, you can get stock in either tiller or remote, but the Travel S, you have to buy the kit afterwards. So on the tiller version, you can see we've got our kill switch right here. And what's really nice about this tiller is its ability to raise and lower. You can see this almost goes 90 degrees when it's all the way up. And then to fold it down, we're just going to push that lever after it gets level. And then it drops down and we can get it totally out of the way. And if the motor's not on the transom, it comes even further down. I also really like how this tiller is just well built. It's all sealed. There's really not much to go wrong with it. The grip is really smooth. It's comfortable on your hand. You can also adjust the friction to raising and lowering the tiller. So there's a machine screw right in here. I have this set so I can take my hand off the tiller and it doesn't fall down, which isn't the case with some other electric outboards that we're talking about today. So on the Spirit 1.0 Plus, the only option for controlling your steering and your speed is a tiller. It looks very similar to this, and it's not replaceable with anything else. On the Spirit Evo, you can use the tiller, which we have set up here today, or you can use a wireless top mount throttle that mounts to a horizontal surface, or a hardwired side mount throttle that also has a separate screen that you can mount to a vertical surface. If you're doing that and you're a sailor, you can put a pin underneath the battery that locks the motor centered, so then you can use your sailboat's rudder or tiller to steer. And if you're on a motorboat that has a steering wheel, you can get the remote kit to hook this up to a standard Teleflex steering line. But on the tiller version on the Evo, you can see that it does lift up, not as high as the Torqeedo, and it also won't stay up, right? There's no way to adjust that friction. It does also come down, you pull it out, and then you can push it down. So you can still get it out of the way, but it's not quite as feature rich as with the Travel S. So the Remigo One only comes in a tiller version. It does have a way to control the speed with a remote. So obviously this is a lot different than any other of the electric outboards that we sell in terms of controlling your speed, right? On the Temo, Torqeedo Travel, and ePropulsion Spirit, we twist the end of the tiller handle to give the motor more or less power and change between forward and reverse. On the Remigo, we use these buttons. So if I click down there, we go faster. If I click down here, we go slower. If I press both of them, we go to neutral. And then if I press the top one there, we're going to go into reverse. If I want to go faster in reverse, I press it again. If I want to come back to neutral or go into forward, I just press the other button, and then we get going there. So that was one of my concerns when I first saw this motor, is I thought that would be pretty clunky, but after using it a couple times, it's pretty easy to get used to. You know, if you can reach the end of the tiller, you can reach the top of the motor pretty easily. But if you do want to control your speed at the end of the tiller, you can buy the wireless remote control for the Remigo. We don't have one with us here today, but it clips on to the end of the tiller, and then you can, it has the same buttons that's right here, but on the end of your tiller. So you don't have to move your hand around as much. It's also nice because you can use that remote control to control your power output somewhere else in the boat besides right next to the motor. So the Temo 1000 only comes in a tiller version. Its tiller is quite unique. You can stow it very easily in the motor. So you fold it up, drop it in, and then it's totally out of the way. So we like how that protects the tiller from damage and just makes this motor quite portable. When you want to go and use it again, just raise it up, drop it down, and we're ready to go. But there's no remote throttle option for the Temo 1000. Only way to control your speed is with the tiller right here. And just like other electric outboards, or most other electric outboards, will turn the tiller one way to to go into forward, and then turn the tiller the other way to go into reverse. So another advantage of the Travel S is its tilt and trim mechanism. Not only can you go all the way up or all the way down, but you have a number of shallow water tilt angles in between. So if you want to raise your motor, right now ours is locked, you can lift this lever up. If you lift it up and back, as I just did, the motor is still down, but it's unlocked. So this is a good thing to do if you're going to be in shallow water. So if you run aground, the motor will kick up. If you want to lift the motor up to a different tilt position, you pull that lever up, let it drop down, and you raise it up a little bit, and then it'll lock. So that's our first shallow water angle, our second shallow water angle, and we've got another one there, another one there. You can see the tiller is starting to get close to the floor, but I can raise it up. And another one there, and that's our max tilt angle. So that's 90 degrees to the bracket. You can see it's not 90 degrees to the water because our transom's angled, but because it has that high tilt angle, the pylon still easily comes out of the water. Another great feature with the new Torqeedo is the ability to lock and unlock your steering. So right now, our steering is totally unlocked. So you can see how the battery wants to fall down because it's heavier than the tiller. But we have this lever here on the back. So we're gonna bring this back to the center. And if we push this all the way up, it keeps this motor locked in the middle. So that's a great feature for sailors who want to use their boat's tiller and rudder to steer. But even if you're using this on a dinghy, it can be nice to keep this centered when you raise the motor up all the way. And then the last option with this lever in the middle prevents the motor from turning more than 60 degrees to either side. And that's really nice because then when you trim the motor up, the battery doesn't slam down and hit the side of your boat or the floor. It just sits like so. When it comes to steering and tilting and trimming the motor, again, this isn't quite as feature rich as the Travel S. Right now the motor is all the way down and it's locked. If we pull this pin out to the side and raise that up and then release the pin, now our trim is unlocked. So again, if you're running in shallow water, that's what you want to do, but be careful if you use reverse, it will also come up. If we want to tilt the motor up all the way, we'll pull that pin out and then lift that, push down on the tiller or grab the handle here, and that comes up all the way. You can see it does want to kind of turn to the side, so we can put the tiller in there in this boat, but if we bring the tiller up, it does want to turn upside down because of the weight of the battery. And unless you can prevent that happening on your boat, like we can here by putting the tiller between the floor and the tube, there's no real way to stop that from happening. If you want to lock the steering on this motor, you do so by removing the battery and then putting a pin underneath. So we'll undo our cable there, take our battery off, and then you can see that right there, there's a hole. And that's, you get a pin when you buy this motor, you bring that centered, you drop the pin in there, you put the battery back on, and then your steering is locked. And you can use your sailboat's rudder or tiller to steer. All right, so to tilt and trim the Remigo up, what they recommend is that you actually lock the steering, which you do by pulling the end of the tiller forward, then raising it up, and that locks the motor centered. So again, if you're a sailor, you can do that and then use your boat's rudder to steer. And then to raise the motor up, you push this lever back and then pull forward on the tiller handle. You can do that when the tiller is down, but it's a little bit harder to do because then you have to get all the way down low. We can see that the max tilt angle on the Remigo is not nearly as high as the Torqeedo or the Spirit or the Temo. So that pod at the bottom is more likely to sit in the water. But if you adjust your shaft length, you might be able to get it out a little bit more. Also, if you don't have an angled transom, it's less likely to end up down there. To drop the motor down, you're going to press down on your tiller and press down on that. And then once that's disengaged, it'll come down. And there are these rubber stoppers right here that hit the bracket that make it so the motor doesn't slam down. And then it locks in and we're good to go once again. So tilting and trimming the Remigo up and down, relatively straightforward. You can lock the steering centered by pushing this lever up. You just have to make sure the motor is straight. That comes in there. And then this is locked centered. To raise the motor, Temo recommends pulling up on the handle rather than pushing down on the tiller. First, we'll need to unlock our tilt trim by pushing that down, and then we can raise our motor up. If we want to lock it in this up position, we need to pull it up high and then push down on that lock and then drop it down. And that's our fully up angle. A little bit higher than the Remigo One, but not quite as high as the Spirit or the Travel. This motor does also have a shallow water tilt angle. To put the motor back down, we're going to pull forward on the top of the motor, push that lever down, and then that shallow water angle will come in right, oh, just missed it, right about there. So that allows you to tilt the motor up about 20 degrees and get it a little further out when you're in shallow water. So we showed you how these motors get tilted up on the water, but it's a lot easier to see the difference between these motors on land. So we're going to tilt them all up so you can kind of compare the max tilt trim angle on each motor. So we've tilted all of these motors up to their maximum tilt height. You might be wondering, why is this important? Well, if the tilt height is too low, then this pylon can end up sitting in the water even when the motor is pulled up, or rubbing up against the sand if you're pulling your dinghy up and onto the beach. So the winner of this segment of our video is clearly the Torqeedo Travel. The max tilt height here is 90 degrees. It also has another tilt height where it's almost at 90 degrees if you wanted it lower for some reason. Next up, we've got the ePropulsion Spirit Evo. This has a max tilt height of 85 degrees. The Spirit 1.0 Plus, which is ePropulsion's other 1 kilowatt, 3 horsepower electric outboard, has a slightly lower max tilt height of 75 degrees. So if you have, this is especially important if you have an angled transom, right? All of these motor mounts are sitting at 85, 90 degrees, but if your transom's angled back, that pylon would sit a little bit lower. So if you do have an angled transom and you're between the Spirit Evo and 1.0 Plus, it might be better to go with the Evo. Next up, we have the Remigo, which has the lowest max angle here. See, it can't get up. It will go up a little bit more, but it locks right here. So it's a little disappointing to see that. Most likely that this pylon ends up hitting the sand or getting stuck in the water. What is kind of one of the redeeming qualities of the Remigo One in that regard is when the tiller is extended like this, it can't move, or if the tiller's up like that, it's locked and it also can't move. So the part that would be sitting in the water or dragging is this aluminum part here, not your propeller. So not the end of the world. Also, because you can adjust the shaft length, this is ideal for your boat. It may be a little bit higher up and thus bringing everything a little bit further out of the water. And then finally, we've got the Temo 1000. Their max tilt height is the same as the Evo at 85 degrees. And again, if you adjust your shaft length and bring everything up a little bit, this will be even further out of the water. So don't expect it to be an issue with the Temo. You can also easily lock this motor centered. So if anything does rub, it would be the front of the pylon there. So we hope you found this video helpful. If you enjoyed this, definitely check out the other parts of our series comparing all of these 3 horsepower, 1 kilowatt electric outboards. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. We do our best to get back to everyone. And if you want to download a PDF guide or buy any of these motors, head over to our website, which is emoelectric.co. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.